Have you ever encountered someone who, on the surface, presented as perfectly reasonable, perhaps even remarkably composed and generous, yet an indefinable sense of unease lingered after your interaction? What if the true indicators of danger in human character are not the loud declarations of hostility or overt acts of deceit, but something far more insidious, operating beneath a veneer of normalcy? Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, dedicated his life to exploring the depths of the human psyche. He identified a particular characteristic, often cloaked in apparent virtue, that he believed marks the most perilous type of individual. This trait isn't what we instinctively guard against, like overt aggression or transparent dishonesty. Instead, this subtle danger frequently masquerades as exceptional calm, unwavering self-control, or even disarming charm. It is this very disguise that allows it to creep into our lives, often unrecognized, until its damaging effects become undeniable. Today, we will journey through Jung's profound psychological insights to uncover this critical warning sign, a sign that, once understood, may fundamentally alter how you perceive certain people around you. To grasp the gravity of Jung's warning, we must first touch upon his model of the human mind. Jung posited that each of us develops a persona, a carefully crafted social mask designed to navigate the external world, to gain acceptance, and to fulfill societal roles. It's the face we show our colleagues, our acquaintances, even sometimes our loved ones. But behind this curated exterior lies the vast, often uncharted territory of the unconscious. This inner world is a repository of primal instincts, deeply buried emotions, suppressed experiences, and the universal patterns of human experience Jung called archetypes. Within this hidden realm, one of the most crucial components is the shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is the psychic container for all the aspects of ourselves that we have deemed unacceptable, traits we have consciously or unconsciously rejected. Jung proposed that the shadow is not solely a byproduct of societal pressure. It emerges from the inherent tension between our authentic nature and the version of ourselves we feel compelled to be. As children, we are incredibly attuned to cues from our environment. What behaviors earn approval, what aspects of our personality are celebrated, and which are met with disapproval or punishment. Traits that don't align with these external validations, perhaps raw vulnerability, intense anger, burgeoning ambition, or a strong independent streak, are often quietly relegated to the darkness of the unconscious. Over years, we solidify an identity based on these approved parts, effectively disowning the rest. But these disowned aspects do not simply vanish. They persist, alive and active, beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. They continue to shape our reactions, influence our choices, and color our perceptions in ways we seldom recognize. It is this potent, unseen influence that makes the unexamined shadow so pivotal to our psychological well-being and potentially so hazardous when it remains entirely unexplored and unintegrated. The power of the shadow lies not in any inherent evil, for it is simply that which is unacknowledged. It holds our raw impulses, our unexamined envy, our deepest fears, but also, significantly, our repressed talents and dormant strengths. However, when these elements are denied a conscious place in our personality, they don't remain pure. They often become distorted, twisted by their exile. Individuals who persistently deny their shadow frequently project these disowned qualities onto others, finding fault with the world for the very tendencies they cannot face within themselves. Jung viewed this dynamic as a psychological blind spot, capable of generating considerable internal and external conflict. Let's delve deeper into what unfolds when the shadow is not merely ignored, but actively and entirely repressed. When an individual systematically denies their more challenging impulses or less acceptable feelings, these energies do not dissipate. Instead, they retreat further into the unconscious, where, like compressed springs, they accumulate potent energy, awaiting an opportunity for release. Jung famously warned that what is not made conscious will be lived out as fate. In essence, the more strenuously we refuse to acknowledge our inherent complexities and potential flaws, the more these unseen aspects are likely to govern our lives from the shadows, dictating our patterns and outcomes. The unconscious is not a passive storage facility for these repressed elements. Jung saw it as an active, transformative force. Denied aspects of the self don't simply lie dormant. They undergo a kind of psychic mutation, constantly seeking expression through indirect and often surprisingly destructive channels. The more intensely these disowned parts are suppressed, the more symbolic, irrational, and forceful their eventual emergence tends to be. Persistent nightmares, compulsive or addictive behaviors, inexplicable phobias, or recurring patterns of self-sabotage can all be potent indicators of a shadow desperately trying to breach the defenses of conscious awareness. Jung believed that the longer these internal signals are disregarded, the more their intensity escalates, potentially pushing an individual towards a significant psychological crisis, a point that could either lead to a breakdown or, with conscious effort, a profound breakthrough. A person who heavily represses their shadow might, to the outside world, appear extraordinarily serene, impeccably composed, even saintly. Yet their internal landscape often tells a far more turbulent story. Over time, this profound split between the polished outer self and the unacknowledged inner reality creates an immense psychological tension that inevitably seeks an outlet. Sometimes this manifests in sudden, uncharacteristic emotional outbursts that seem disproportionate to the situation. Other times, the repressed energy leaks out more subtly through persistent sarcasm, a need to control others, or thinly veiled acts of cruelty disguised as well-intentioned concern or guidance. Such individuals often find themselves perplexed by why they undermine their relationships or why they feel a chronic, gnawing dissatisfaction despite outward appearances of success or contentment. The root, however, consistently traces back to the same source: a shadow left in darkness, unacknowledged and unintegrated. This dynamic becomes particularly perilous when it merges with a specific and powerful illusion, one that Jung considered among the most insidious pitfalls of the human psyche. The individuals Jung cautioned against most urgently were not those who were openly aggressive or transparently flawed. Instead, they were those who had become rigidly convinced of their own unassailable goodness. When someone constructs an identity rooted in the belief that they are morally pure, spiritually advanced, or fundamentally righteous, they often sacrifice the capacity for honest self-reflection. The perceived certainty of one's own virtue can render a person immune to self-criticism. Shielded by this conviction, they may unconsciously justify manipulative behaviors as helping, controlling actions as protecting, or even inflict cruelty under the guise of tough love or necessary lessons. Their actions might appear ethically sound on the surface, meticulously rationalized, but beneath this veneer often lies a powerful, unacknowledged agenda: the desperate avoidance of their own shadow. Jung observed that the more ferociously someone clings to an idealized self-image of virtue, the more probable it is that they will unconsciously act out its direct opposite, precisely because they have buried any conscious awareness that such impulses could possibly exist within them. What, then, is the invisible thread connecting these patterns of self-deception and potentially harmful behavior? According to Carl Jung, the single most dangerous sign in a person is the complete and utter absence of shadow awareness. When an individual adamantly refuses to acknowledge their own capacity for wrongdoing, when they genuinely see themselves as incapable of harboring anger, envy, cruelty, selfishness, or deceit, they become truly unpredictable and, paradoxically, more capable of inflicting harm. It is crucial to understand that the mere presence of darkness or flaws within a personality is not what makes someone dangerous. It is the persistent, unwavering denial of that darkness. Individuals who recognize their own imperfections, who are acquainted with their potential to err or cause pain, are often more trustworthy. Their self-awareness allows them to anticipate their own pitfalls and consciously take steps to mitigate harm to themselves and others. Conversely, those who believe they possess no shadow operate in a state of profound psychological blindness regarding their own motivations and behaviors. They are prone to justifying any action, rationalizing any consequence, and often leave a trail of confusion and hurt in their wake, genuinely failing to comprehend the significant role they played. In Jung's view, this isn't merely a psychological shortcoming, it represents a form of spiritual and emotional immaturity, a dangerous disconnect from the totality of human experience. So, the next time you encounter someone who consistently insists on their unwavering kindness, their impeccable morality, their perpetual correctness in all situations, it warrants a moment of quiet reflection. Ask yourself, what aspects of their own humanity might they be refusing to see? What parts of their own inner world remain unacknowledged? The answer, and your ability to recognize this pattern, might be crucial for your own well-being.